The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. We are now in the third round of questions, and every senator has 5 minutes. We'll now start with Senator Blas. We will take a brief recess, technical issues. The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, before I start, I think that just to clarify some of the, charts that have been presented and been provided, and more particular, I think that one of the concerns that we had was, or that was expressed, was with regard to the chart that was generated from the department or from the Chamber of Commerce. I just got word from the Chamber that they weren't the ones, although they put all the information together, they got the information from the statistics posted by the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. And so they even gave the website, or Bureau of Labor Statistics from the Department of Labor. I apologize. bls.gov.guam.gov. So that's where this came from. This information came from there. Okay, so I just wanted for a point of clarification. Before I ended in the last one, I guess Shane or Mr. Byrne, I had inquired about the number of employees that are still entitled to their merit bonus, but if they did not, so I'm going to be very clear, it has been the decision that those merit bonuses that were owed between fiscal years 2012 and 2017 are not going to be considered or are not going to be entertained in any right now proposed plan that you've got that you're going to present to the governor.
The governor made a commitment to pay from 2017 onwards,
Okay.
and we provided her with the information of what that would cost and who was involved.
Okay. And can you again explain the reasoning for not wanting to go all the way back to 2012?
As I said to Senator Fisher, if you want to ask the governor that, that's certainly the appropriate thing to do. My understanding is that the reasoning was that she felt responsible for unpaid commitments during the term of her administration. She did not feel responsible for unpaid commitments made by other administrations.
Although it's a responsibility of the government of Guam.
Well, I'm not really sure what you mean.
Who's responsible then for paying this, whether it become from 2013 or 2020 or 2019? Who is ultimately responsible? Who?
The law that this is payable under made certain preconditions to the payment. During the course of other administrations, those preconditions weren't met. So I think there's an argument to say that they should only be paid when the conditions are met. But that was the decision of the governor, and if you...
No, I appreciate it.
That's the mandate that we carried out.
No, I understand that. Again, I'm not blaming you on this thing. I just like basically your understanding of that, okay? And quite honestly, the governor may have a different, but that was your interpretation of it, and I understand that. I'm not going to hold that against you, okay? So I appreciate that. But that said, you bring up something, well, and I need to ask. Are merit bonus payments and annual increments, are they by statute or are they just?
Yes, Senator, that's correct. They are both by statute.
So they're both by statute, okay. So there is then a legal obligation to be able to provide it.
Yes, once the conditions of each of those were met by in statute, yes, there's.
Okay. So we have a legal obligation to do this, but let me ask you something. So this is the legal obligation. Is the 22% increase a legal obligation?
DOA has a legal obligation to review pay scales every 3 years. And that's what we did, and that was what was the result.
Okay. But is it now a legal obligation?
A legal obligation of what?
Are we legally bound to pay it?
That's really not a consideration for DOA. Our obligation is to compute it.
Yeah, and
A
you've
bill
done
has
it.
been put together in order to pay it.
So
If you
that's why.
pass the bill, I guess it's a legal
Yeah,
obligation.
and if we pass
If you
the-
don't pass the bill,
Yeah, and that's what
it
I
may
get.
not
Okay,
be.
so at this point in time, it's simply a piece of legislation that is being deliberated, being discussed, but yet not has reached or passed the threshold of being legally bound to pay it.
it's our earnest hope on behalf of the government employees that it will become payable.
Is that a elongated yes or no?
That's my answer, Senator.
Okay, if I was to ask you then to limit your answer to yes or no, what would it be?
It would be neither. I gave you my answer.
Okay, that's fair. But yet, there's these legal obligations that we have that haven't been done. You know, when you mentioned competitive scale, one of the things I wanted to get, and I may not have enough time to be able to get to it maybe in the next round, but I want you to be able to think about this because I'm going to ask it again. Let's give a scenario of it. Let's say that this was to pass, and an individual is at a certain pay scale and grade, okay? Let's say that they're at, you know, M or L4, okay? Making so much. Now you give them a 22% pay increase. Where would this now individual fit in the pay scale? Or how would you, if he falls in between a pay scale, okay, and as far as what he gets, because I understand if you're using the same methodology as the okay. So if he falls within more of the lesser amount of a pay scale than it is on the next scale, which one would he fall under? Okay, let's say, you know, he's going to make 1943, okay, at step M6, all right, and that's at 1935, but M7 is 1989. Which one would he fall under?
Thank you, Senator Blas. That's
Well,
your time.
they can
Yes.
answer the question.
Yes, they can.
The slotting for employees would be step to step. So if in that scenario, if an employee was at pay grade L, step 4, they would be slotted straight to pay grade L, step 4, into the new pay scale.
So you adjust.
So they would just go straight
new
into
scale.
the step that they're currently in.
I'll continue that question in my next round. Thank you, Madam
Thank you
Chair.
very much, Senator Blas. Senator Dueñas.
Sidus Masi, Madam Chair. Just to get it on the record, because I need the total amount, and I just want to be able to ask once again directly to the director. So you've made representations once again that the special funds, if they're lagging or they're short, it's not an issue because of the current surpluses in general fund, and general fund will cover any requirements under the special funds. That's been your statement before. Is that still your statement?
To answer your question most precisely, or the most precise way I can, a deficit in the general funds, when identified at the year end, is eliminated by transferring funds from the general fund to eliminate that deficit.
So there's an obligation of the government of Guam, if the special funds are lagging behind adopted revenues and have been expended, for the general fund to subsidize those special fund delinquency.
Senator, I tried to answer that question before. It does not depend solely on revenues. If revenue shortfalls are offset by expenditure control, then the resultant deficit will be less than the revenue shortfall. That resultant deficit, there's not an obligation, but it's prudent accounting practice to eliminate that deficit on the general fund in the year that it arises. You could choose just to let it run through year by year until that deficit was eliminated by the general fund itself, but that's not prudent accounting practice.
Well, I think you're right, and it's not prudent accounting practice in my opinion. Now that we're debating this in the scenario of a budget, to act like we don't have this snapshot and we've adopted these revenues and we're negative in those revenues. So for the purposes of this body, at least for myself, prudent budgeting, I would have to take that $9 million off the table. DOE, I think this is an easy one, 21 million, correct? In the bill that just passed for Department of Education?
Yeah, but you might want to do that, Senator. I cannot agree that that's necessarily the result. Just by example, the shortfall in the general funds for fiscal 22 was, I believe, like 13 million in revenues, but the required transfer that we're proposing to make is about 6.
So we don't need a budget, Mr. Byrne, if we just roll like that. I mean, you don't need to adopt revenues in a budget then. Just say it's 22% and we're done. We're not debating a budget then anymore. Is that what you're saying?
No. I was merely trying to be more precise than ever about the mechanism for making up deficit on special fund shortfalls.
So moving on to the 21 million, do you agree with that number?
The bill that you currently considered is $21 million worth of cost.
Okay, so you're on the record also 6 million that you are identifying and recording for merit bonuses at $6 million.
Yes.
As far as this governor is concerned, her legal obligation under her term is $6 million.
We debated the legal obligation. I'm not sure about that, but the amount that is going to be paid is $6 million.
And we agree now, although I completely disagree with you that it should be done within their budgets, that somewhere in the amount of $6 million will be required for the purposes of carrying the benefit cost to this pay plan.
Yes, sir.
Steve, I got to ask you a question. Do you concur that it would be prudent to consider the $6 million in obligations for this pay plan that would be required for the benefits? to not be factored into this pay scheme?
And the 6 million you're referring to, Senator, is for what? What are you referring the 6 million to?
If you hired me last year, Steve, and you gave me a compensation plan that was a base salary of $45,000, and my contribution requirement was $15,000, and that was a total of $60,000, and then you gave me a raise of 22%, and you were obligated to pay me, would you think that the only 22% raise that you gave me for is just for the $45,000, or would it be complete with the $45,000 and the $15,000 for benefits in terms of what you need to allocate for my pay raise?
Senator, my position is, and it's always been, is that all expenditures incurred by the government should have an appropriation to back up those expenditures. During the course of when we prepare the budget, of course, we prepare the budget and end up at the end of the day with a balanced budget. So I'm assuming that all the expenditures that are anticipated to happen within that fiscal year are supported by the appropriate appropriations to cover those expenses. Now, in instances like this, when we are trying to address a 22% increase in salary, it is my opinion that if the government is going to do this, the government should have sufficient funds to implement this 22% salary increase.
Because, Mr. Byrne, everything I keep hearing, and I've heard this year after year after year, when every single agency comes before us, and we look at their budget request, consistently, salaries and benefits are anywhere between 88 to sometimes as high as 95% of their entire budget, leaving basically almost nothing for operations. And this is why I completely disagree with you when you say that lapses and other funds that are currently in agency by agency budget will cover the benefits. It's because what you're going to do by and large is you are going to cut their operations, because they're going to have to cover the benefits portion of the increase that you've just made. That money is not going to fall out of the sky.
Senator, and I think during the budget negotiations, excuse me, lapses are often discussed. Lapses generally happen when personnel costs remain unspent. Shane has already spoken about the number of vacancies in the government. We don't recruit somebody unless the funds are there. If those positions go unfilled, lapses will occur.
I'm going to just respectfully disagree and say that for budgeting purposes, and this is why I continue to say, this should be done in the context of budgets, not a one-off in the middle of the year. So for the record, I'm going to stake my claim that this total obligation is $44 million. I think in just a little while, you're going to find out why we have personnel issues, and there's going to be a big difference between what you presented. Jesus Mossy, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Parkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to talk a little bit about unclassified employees and limited term appointments, because I'm currently the chair for the GRTA, the oversight chair for GRTA, so I'm kind of curious about it. We have a large number of rank and file employees with GRTA that are limited term appointments. These are bus drivers and customer service employees. Would you classify them as political hacks?
No, sir.
GRT recently got 10 additional buses. Would you say there's a shortage of manpower at GRTA right now and the need to hire more bus drivers?
Based on my discussions with them, yes, that's what they're conveying to us.
So is it fair to say that many of the LTA positions at GRTA are necessary, difficult to fill, and currently underpaid?
Well, the positions that they are utilizing are classified positions, but picking them up in the unclassified status, but very necessary to their operations, their transportation operations.
Okay, let's switch gears to DOE. To your knowledge, who is in charge of hiring at DOE? The superintendent or the governor?
That would be the superintendent.
I am told of one-to-one aides for students with disabilities are limited-term unclassified employees because of the nature of their employment. Would you support removing these individuals simply because we assume that the word unclassified means political?
Based on my discussions with DOE, HR, and their difficulties in trying to fill positions, I wouldn't recommend anything that would hamper their ability to do so on a year-to-year basis.
Okay, and so just we're here. Aides that help students with disabilities, even though they're unclassified, you wouldn't consider them political hacks?
I wouldn't consider again,
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Please state your point of order,
You
Senator
know,
Blas.
in indifference to the good senator and for the dignity of those employees, I would ask that you direct that he do not refer to unclassified employees as unclassified hacks or political hacks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Senator
he had
Blas.
no such complaints when that term was used by a previous member of this body, so his point of order is late. The door has already been opened, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm
Point of
sorry.
information,
Senator
ma'am,
Prado.
I was referring to special project coordinators as political hacks, not the entire unclassified service of the
Okay,
government of
thank
Guam,
you
ma'am.
for your point of
Thank you.
personal privilege. Senator Barnett. Senator Parkinson, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, let's switch gears a little bit again. I want to clear up a distinction about CWAs and judging an individual's performance. These are two separate things, correct?
the pay scale and adjustments we're recommending are separate from the performance evaluation system.
Okay, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on it. So procurement, so for example, procurement specialists all share the same pay scale, but as their performance shows merit, then they go up in steps to judge their individual performance. Is that correct?
And that's correct. If their performance is satisfactory, they get an additional step.
Okay. Are any unclassified employees covered by the GPP paid for by federal grants?
Quite a few limited term employees are.
Is it usual or permissible to pay a federal grant employee doing a job under the GPP less than his locally funded counterpart?
Based on consistency of how we administer pay, we try to keep everything equitable if a position's being filled to utilize the same pay grade and step that we've established for it.
Okay. This is for the director of OFB. Typically, the budget outlines all revenues subject to legislative appropriation, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so can you point out where in the current budget this legislature recognizes compact funding for available for appropriation?
Can you repeat your question, Senator?
Could you point out where in this current budget the legislature recognizes compact funding as available for appropriation?
My understanding, Senator, is compact impact funds are at the discretion of the governor. It is not; those funds are not available for appropriation to the legislature.
Okay, so it's true that the compact funds are not available for appropriation by the legislature. So whatever the feds do, it doesn't specifically take away revenues, appropriations traditionally recognized by this body. Whatever the feds do, it's not going to affect what this body does.
That's correct.
This is for OFB as well. What positions in the legislative branch are considered unclassified?
I believe, Senator, all the positions in the legislature are unclassified.
Would you categorize them as political hacks because they're all unclassified?
Senator, that is not for me to answer. I don't think I'm in a position to answer that question.
Don't worry about it, sir. It's not necessary. What are the qualifications whenever somebody seeks to apply for the OFB office, what qualifications are required?
I would think, Senator, that any position within the legislature.
Please state your point of inquiry, Senator Fisher.
Yes, ma'am. Pardon me, Madam Chair. I was under the impression that the debate this evening, is limited to the proposal before the House. I do not see a question before the House relating to the hiring of individuals within that gentleman's office. So the question is essentially, or the observation, I suppose, is that this is not germane.
It is germane because we're talking about the qualifications of unclassified employees, and I want to compare the differences between the branches to kind of judge the qualifications necessary.
Okay, thank you. Please keep to the scope of the bill. Thank you, Senator Parkinson.
All right. This is for Shane. Could you give some examples of unclassified employees that are not working at a loop and are not heads of agencies?
Some examples of positions that are utilized as limited term, right? I did mention community program aides, program coordinators. We have tried to get some eligibility specialists, administrative assistants, some clerks, customer service representatives. Positions like those are classified positions that are hired in the unclassified service as limited term. I did mention a few actual unclassified positions. Special projects coordinator, there I believe is a property control officer. These are generally statutorily created or were created in the past by the Civil Service Commission when they had non-adjudicatory authority and the ability to create unclassified positions, which DOA no longer has or has never had the ability to create.
In DOA's hiring process for unclassified employees, are there unclassified employees on the general pay plan that have to meet minimum requirements for the roles they are taking?
If one is to get employed in a limited term capacity with a classified position, then yes, we ensure that they meet the qualifications for those positions.
So they have to meet some minimum qualification. You just can't hire a political hack.
Well, in terms of the qualifications, what is prescribed on the job specification for that position is what they have to meet.
Okay, I seem to recall that we had two previous CWAs. One was in 2014. Were there unclassified employees in that GPP that year?
Yes, there were.
Was there a deficit that year?
Yes, Senator.
Who was the governor at the time?
I don't think I was on island, so I'm going to ask the...
Madam Chair, this question is germane because it seems we have the exact same set of circumstances, but if we only have one difference, maybe that might speak to some of the resistance we have towards pay raises in this body. Is that a motion?
Senator Fisher, you may state your point of inquiry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The member is out of order. These questions are not germane to the proposal before the House.
Okay, is that a point of inquiry?
I suppose it's, let me convert that to a point of inquiry. May a member address matters not before the House?
I don't understand how a previous CWA is not germane to this conversation.
Thank you. Please proceed, Senator Parkinson.
Okay, let me repeat. I recall in 2014, were there unclassified employees in the GPP pay plan that year?
Yes, there were.
Was there a deficit that year?
Yes, sir.
Who was the governor that year?
Governor Calvo.
There was another CWW and CWA in 09. Was there a deficit that year?
I don't recall, but I believe so.
There was a deficit. Very good memory, sir. Were there unclassified employees in that GPP plan?
Yes, there were.
And who was the governor in 09?
And Governor Camacho.
Okay. And is it true for the vast majority of GPP employees, they only got a 3.8% pay raise the last time we did raises?
It was adjusted by 14%. 3.8 was a consideration to try and address compression at that time.
All right. And I'd like to thank both of you for clarifying for me that unclassified employees, especially bus drivers, are not political hacks. I'd like to yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Parkinson. Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to continue asking questions about the unclassified employees, if you don't mind. Specifically the process. So when you talk about these LTAs, are these jobs announced to the public so that there's an opportunity for the average Joe or Josefa Cruz to apply for these jobs?
In some cases, these jobs will be announced and they need to fill it more expediently than the process would allow for hiring of a classified employee. So in that time, in the interim, they do pick someone up in the limited term capacity.
So when the job is not announced, is the person who's hired selected?
Let's say the department's in the process of processing a recruitment to come down to us to announce, and they need someone to fill the position right away. They would ask us to profile someone to see if they qualify, and if they do qualify, they'll pick them up in the limited term.
Right. Can you go a little bit more into the qualifications? So like a special projects coordinator, what the minimum qualifications must someone who's being hired as a special projects coordinator meet?
Without having the job specification in front of me, I believe it does require a bachelor's degree. I believe it does have any equivalency clause to account for experience that's relevant to, I guess, the job they're going to perform.
So would you say that the process for hiring limited term appointments and unclassified hires is faster than hiring in the classified service?
Yes, it is faster.
Right, it is. Why is that, sir?
It's faster because it's limited term. The nature of it is that they'd be hired immediately, and generally departments will try to recruit for it in the classified service while that limited term person is employed. Many times, not all the time, sometimes the person holding this capacity has the opportunity to apply for that classified position once the announcement is put out. And at that point, the system for recruiting classified employees takes over.
Could you answer this? What is the point of having people compete and apply for jobs that are available?
Generally, first and foremost, to uphold the merit system, and second, to try and fill those vacancies, those that are truly classified in nature and should be permanent, to try and get qualified candidates in. And
would you agree that competition breeds excellence?
in most cases, yeah.
Right, yeah. So just going back to classified hires in the merit system and having people compete for jobs, do you believe that that is something that should be the priority over hiring unclassified and limited term appointments? Should that be the norm?
If I look at that question as far as what we consider our core function at DOA, the classified positions are the priority. Right. We do spend a lot of time and resources to satisfy that process. But yes, I mean, there are limited term appointments that
right.
do.
It just seems to me like a situation where it's the easy way. Hiring LTAs, hiring people you know, not allowing people to compete for good jobs that are available is a lot easier than finding the best person for the job. And so I just would ask, how many LTAs and unclassified, and I've asked this this is the third time, Mr. Shane. How many unclassified employees are in the general pay plan? How many positions?
Positions?
Yeah.
Again, going back to truly unclassified employees, truly unclassified positions, you're probably looking at approximately 10 positions.
10 titles.
10 titles.
Can you, again, so there's special projects coordinator?
Right, special project coordinators, the law allows.
Because I didn't see I'm looking at your letter here, the list of positions, occupational category, and this is the benchmark list of positions?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't bring my glasses, but I didn't see special projects coordinator here.
Right, what we did was we looked at those core positions in those categories, but we
Core
also.
positions, sir?
Correct.
Core positions?
Right.
Okay.
In those
Can you define a core position for me?
Core positions based on the category are those for that specific category whose duties are inherent and similar in nature. So for instance, you see a lot of the clerical positions together, you see a lot of the professional regulatory positions together, highly technical scientific positions together.
Right.
So those are the positions that we looked at. We also took a cross-reference of the warrant bodies within the line agencies to ensure that we're looking at positions being utilized. We do have a lot of positions, classified positions, that are obsolete, which we're trying to address. So we wanted to make sure that we're looking at positions departments are hiring for and are currently filling with classified employees.
How long have you been with the Department of Administration, sir?
I'm going on 17 years.
17 years. Thank you for your service. I wanted to ask the number of LTAs, unclassified employees, that we see now, just agency to agency, because when I talk to people, I just hear that there are so many. Mm-hmm. Why do we have so many employees that we're hiring into the government of Guam that are not having to compete for jobs like everybody else who doesn't have a connect?
A lot of times the feedback I get from agencies is because of the expediency of the process.
Right, so it's easy.
Yeah,
It's easy.
It's quicker, definitely
Easier, quicker.
Yeah.
Quick and easy isn't always the best way. Right. You know what I hear about and this is, when I was on the campaign trail, even before being a member of the media, I would always receive a lot of complaints, and again, I'm not generalizing, but I would receive a lot of complaints about LTAs and how they were, what did you say about bodies? Warm bodies?
Yes.
Yes, warm bodies in the agencies, complaints from tenured classified employees who would say, for example, Department of Land Management, I received numerous complaints that there were so many LTAs taking up space, they don't know what they're doing. The Guam Department of Education hired a whole bunch of LTAs last year. I mean, I think there was quite a few. It's quite a few. And so I have to ask, and your honest answer, please, do you think that the government of Guam is abusing the system by hiring plenty LTAs and political hires? Because it does seem to be a way to circumvent the process, the merit system. And I believe that's what we're trying to protect here, right? Is that what we're trying to do here?
Yeah. Looking at why a department would hire an LTA, right? And in my discussions with those directors, right, a lot of what we have to handle in our division is, of course, all the issues and the mandates that the department heads have to fill. And, on top of that, personnel issues that they have to take care of. A lot of times what feedback we get, especially when dealing with LTAs, is, let's say they do have an employee who's on medical profile for a long time. They need someone to come in and fill the job. That happens more frequently than people know. Other issues that come up is, non-performance. Let's say they had to get rid of someone for non-performance.
Right.
They need someone immediately to conduct that, the duties of that position. Abused, from my discussions with the directors that we work with, I don't know if I can classify it as abuse.
Okay, but do you guys maintain a list of qualified applicants that are pre-screened and can be hired pursuant to the merit system?
If a department requests for us to see if someone qualifies for that position, we do have a profile on hand to see if they qualified.
Okay,
And
so in the event of agency director or someone comes to you and says, oh my God, we need to hire someone ASAP, can you hire this guy?
no, we won't go to that list. Even if we profiled an employee before, we won't go to that list and say this person is qualified. We generally
So you just put it in, they put it in another way?
well, we when they come to us, we kind of look at what vacancies we're trying to fill, right, on the classified side. For LTAs, we kind of, we don't offer up, I guess, the ones that we've already profiled. We kind of just wait for them to talk to us and ask us, what can we do?
I mean, because I can understand how the unclassified and LTAs are used as a tool, right? And what seems to me would be like an emergency situation. But I mean, are we as a whole, are all the line agencies in an emergency system? Because it seems like they've been hiring a lot of LTAs. And that's why I would say it's abuse, is because when we're hiring LTAs, hardworking people who want to compete for jobs, even some who are already working for the government of Guam, aren't getting that opportunity. And again, that's what we're trying to protect, is the merit system. We're trying to make people get jobs that they deserve to get by competing for them. And by competing for the jobs, usually the best person gets the job, right?
I'd agree with you that the merit system is designed for that, and yeah, many times they do get qualified people that end up becoming a valued member of their organization. Right. So yes, a lot of times the merit system does work.
Right, it's designed to work, right?
Correct.
To breed the best employees, right? And those are the classified employees, the tenured employees, are the employees who are holding up the government of Guam, right? LTAs come and go, administration to administration. Right. Let me ask you this. So these unclassified employees in 2024, right, after this election, and let's say there's a change in administrations, what would happen to these unclassified employees?
If you're looking at LTAs and those agencies that hire them in classified titles, many times, I haven't looked at,
I mean, but you've been in DOA for 17 years, right? So when we have a changeover in administrations, like let's say, for example, Governor Calvo change over to the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration, what happened to all those unclassified employees?
Thank you, Senator Brenna. That'll be the last question, but
Thank you.
please answer.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Shane.
Generally, I mean, I want to say it's a mix. There are a lot of LTAs that once their term expires, they leave, right? But those that end up being great employees for the agencies will reach out and try to keep those employees there. But a lot of factors go into that, funding, right, and everything like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a mix of what happens to them.
Thank you very much. Senator Perez.
Could I just add
yes,
to that,
Mr. Byrne, please.
Madam Chairman. DOA certainly advocates the merit system as the method by which government employees should be employed. There's no doubt about that. But some of the questions that you've just asked highlight, and we've spoken about the difficulties in recruiting people. We have a list. Were we to have a full range of applicants for that list, we wouldn't be employing some of the techniques that we have to short circuit, if you like. I guess you didn't use that word, but I think that was the word that you were.
I think it was circumvent, maybe.
We wouldn't do it. We would rely upon the tried and trusted system. But some of the things that Shane was talking about are federal programs that don't last. If senators are worried about ongoing commitments, a limited federal program which has an end date really kind of demands that you don't employ someone and make a lifetime commitment, but you do use the LTA process. But as I say, the DOA is an advocate for the merit system.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Perez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield my time to Senator Burnett.
You may continue. 5 minutes on the clock, Senator Burnett.
Thank you, Senator Perez, for your generosity. I mean, it just seems to me that again, we get into this habit in the government of Guam, and I say we, it's interesting because I wasn't always on this side of things. But it just kind of seems to me like we've gotten used to just hiring people the quick and easy way. instead of, and the reason why I'm really trying to highlight this point is because I get so many complaints about abuses of the merit system, the Civil Service Commission, and, you know, the politics over there, and tenured classified employees feel like they're losing out, right? Because it seems, again, like we've gotten used to this LTA process and this unclassified process and this who you know, and they're not having to compete for these jobs like everyone else is, right? So you see where I'm coming from, and again, I'm just going to go back to, given the temporary nature of their employment, should we really put 22%, you know, an increase of 22% on these unclassified positions?
I think whether we should or shouldn't, you know, in as many years as I've worked with my predecessors on studies like this, right, and consultants, I mean, what we've presented was a holistic plan for movement, right, and I think that's what we're looking at for consistency. I think that's where we come from. Whether you should categorize, you know, and give pay raises based on status, I think we would want to stay consistent with us, with how we presented this today.
Right, and again, that just going back to my first round, that's the problem we're having is this proposal has become take it or leave it, and I'm not sure how this body can go in and make changes that we feel would, you know, be more prudent or more palatable, right, for some of the members. Yes, Mr. Byrne.
Again, Senator, many of these positions, if not the majority of these positions, are federally funded positions.
I wouldn't know because we don't have the numbers. You haven't provided us with any numbers for unclassified employees.
Yeah, because you know, it's not part of the bill because they're funded by the federal government. Not
all of them, though, right?
There's a very few, and that's what Shane was referring to, a handful. But can I please finish my thought?
Yes, sir.
The fact that they're federally funded and, as I just mentioned, have possibly limited grants to which they're entitled, but they're actually working under, but they're sitting next to and doing the same job in many cases as someone who is or has been employed under the merit system. Whereas the employee who has been hired on the merit system may feel aggrieved by the fact that somebody sitting next to them was hired as an unclassified employee, equally well, the unclassified employee might feel aggrieved if they didn't get the same compensation for doing the same work as a merit employee.
Wouldn't you then say, hey, go apply for a job and compete for it just like everyone else and earn that 22%?
I would certainly encourage anybody that can to apply for a job on the open listings, and I do.
Shane, were you talking earlier about unclassified employees moving to classified positions? Can you give me more detail on that?
I think if we're talking about those employees who are hired using the LTA process and they do apply for an opening, yes, they can apply and they'll get put on a list, right, based on their qualifications and ranked against everyone else who applied that qualified. That process, I mean, they'll still have to go through interviews, right? Departments will still select. So that's generally how anyone, right, would make it, including the LTAs, would make it into the classified service.
Is there a waiting period after you're unclassified? Do you have to wait a certain amount of time to be hired into the classified service?
No, there's no waiting period for that. Yeah.
You sure?
There was a statute that prescribed one. I believe there's an AG opinion that stated that it was inorganic in nature.
Wow.
And that was years ago, right? So, right. But it still stands today that we don't impose a waiting period on that.
Earlier, I talked about our ability or inability to go into this proposal, and, you know, I mean, some of the colleagues were talking about sliding scale, some are talking about they don't want anyone making over X amount of dollars to get the 22% or whatever, but in your opinion, if we were to exclude unclassified employees, let's say with the exemption of the mayor's staff, right, because, well, those guys work hard, man, they deserve 32%. What would the impact of that be, and do you think that that's something that we're able to do as a body?
You know, I believe the body can basically pass what they need to in law, but I guess the only thing I would caution is without, you know, seeing what actually comes out of it is we wouldn't understand the full impact of what it would do to an organization if you start you know, changing or having sliding scales or the rationale behind that, how that would affect unclassified employees and the operations, right? There are a lot of LTAs that do support classified employees, and if a residual effect of any action has a lot of those current LTA employees leaving, then there will be an impact on the classified employees that are there. And again, and I know we've stated that it's, you know, consistency is what we're looking for. Right. And, but in that notion, if you start looking at changing how pay is administered based on status, there's a lot of work that would have to go into that. Right. To make sure that departments don't get adversely affected. I'm
looking for consistency too, and I would just say that the tenured classified employees in the government of Guam are the most consistent. They're consistently on the job from administration to administration. They don't need to go out and campaign for anybody to keep their job. When we change from a Republican governor to a Democrat governor to a different Democrat governor, or whatever the situation may be, they still have a job. Yeah, and I think that, you know, that should be our primary focus, is upholding and rewarding the employees in the classified service. And I just have to say, I don't know what the numbers are because we don't see them, that based on my read of the room, we are abusing the process for hiring unclassified employees, whether they're political hacks or not, and LTAs, right? I understand it's a tool that allows the government of Guam to react quickly to fill a vacancy or whatever, but I mean, when we're seeing, you know, LTAs to the tune of 100, 50 in an agency, to me, that just smells bad. And it's, again, perverting the system in which we allow our people to compete for jobs and hire the best applicant, right? Yeah,
I definitely agree with you that the classified employees, right, ensure continuity of business, right? And that's the whole purpose of that class of employee. But I would also be remiss if I didn't say that some LTA positions that are filled do serve a function.
I agree with you all the way. But the problem is I don't have a clear read on how many of those employees actually do play a vital role, and how many of those employees may play a vital role that could be played by someone who actually competed for the job the good old-fashioned way.
Right, and we, you know, at times we do have those discussions with departments. They know their organizations the best, yeah. And so how they utilize those appointments in line and with their classified employees, I mean.
Yeah, because you hear it all the time from the classified workers, right? And you don't hear it very loudly because they're scared to talk, but they say things like, oh, this LTA or this special projects coordinator is connected or whatever, so, you know, we got to be careful around them, or they don't have to do anything, or they don't even come to work, or they're buddy-buddy with the director. And I just hear too many of those stories. So, again, that's why I would prefer to uphold the classified and the merit system, but I do understand that certain unclassified positions and employees are there, you know, for good reason and performing good roles, like the situations that Mr. Byrne explained. But again, without any of that in black and white, and when some of these unclassified positions aren't even listed or aren't even a core position enough to be considered as part of your benchmark list of positions, then I just get the questions, right? And I don't want this to be painted as I don't support these raises, because I do. I definitely feel like there are a lot of hardworking people in the general pay plan. But when I think of good hardworking people in the classified service, I think that those are the people that we should be rewarding first. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Senator
Madam Chair.
Brenna. That's your time. You may respond.
I agree with you as far as the classified employees are concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Shane.
Thank you very much. Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to follow up because the finance staff provided me with some of the information that I had inquired from yesterday, and I wanted to go over with them the information that they have contained in the write-up that they provided to me. I'm going to ask the Sergeant of Arms if he could pass out the copies to those that don't have a copy of this. This is concerning the personnel breakdown. I'm sure there should be more than enough here for the body and numbers that are here. Yeah, just pass it out to the... I want to go over these figures and just to get clarification. Because we've been told that we have a declining number, or, you know, we have a real challenge in trying to maintain Government of Guam personnel. And so I wanted to go over the figures with the information that was provided for our information here and certainly for the general public. So if I could go over, I don't know who would like on the finance team there to go over these numbers, if you could read out the numbers, at least from the information from 2017 to 2021, the number of employees.
Yes,
If you don't
Senator,
mind, Steve, to read that out?
Yes, I'll have Llewellyn go over it. She's the one that compiled the
appreciate it.
information, so
Thank
she
you.
knows the details.
Thank you very much. Luella, thank you if you could provide that information. I mean, we have the copies here, but for the general public that might be listening.
So, Senator, for 2017, we have 3,668 employees. 2018, 3,382. 2019, 5,185. In 2020, 5,423. And in 2021, 5,479. We took these numbers from the Guam Audit. For 2020-2021, there was no general fund count. This is strictly general fund, so we utilized an average of 66.6% based on what was reported in 2019 to get the counts for 2020 and 2021.
And these you mentioned are audited figures. This is from our public auditor?
This is in the financial audit, the Guam financial
And
audit.
are these just employees on the general fund?
Yes.
So it wouldn't include any autonomous agencies?
I did not see, no. I
Does it
didn't-
include the legislature, the judiciary?
Yes.
Why don't we do a marking point then from 2018 to 2019, since we want to talk about previous governors? Let's talk about mine. 2018, you indicated there were 3,382 employees in the general fund. 2019, that increased, according to these audited numbers, to 5,185. Can you tell me how much was that increase just in this period from 2018 to 2019?
Huh? 1,803. Which one? Which one? Oh, this one. Count. 1,803.
If these are indeed exact figures and these are audited amounts, we went from 2018 on the general fund with three, and this includes the Department of Education. I just want to make sure this
Yes.
includes the Department of Education as well.
Yes.
3,382 employees in 2018 to 5,185 employees, and you said that's an increase of 1,803 employees. If it was minus 1,800 employees, I might be a little concerned. You know, that would jump out at me. Altogether, what is the increase of the information you have here from 2021 minus what we had in 2017? How many employees altogether is the difference between what we had in 2017 and 2021?
1,811.
So from 2017 to 2021, these figures show almost an increase of minus, I guess, about maybe 89 employees, 2,000 additional more employees into the general fund line agencies. Do we have any idea where these employees are? Or where did this increase go to?
We didn't do an analysis of that or what agency exactly it came from. We just did the bottom line.
Can you let me know, okay, in 2017, how much was the cost of these 3,668 employees in 2017?
$223,427,643.
Does this include all their benefits? I mean, is this just payroll? Does this include any supplies, resource, equipment? Is this just personnel cost?
It just, for the schedule, it just says personnel costs. So I assume it's everything that would be captured in the.
Okay, and the most recent audited you say here is 2021. What is the cost of the employees listed? I see it says 5,479 employees on the line agencies.
Yes.
And what is that cost at?
$296,074,729.
What is the difference between the employee costs from 2021 minus the employee costs in 2017? I'm happy you're the numbers person. You can help me add that up faster than I can.
72,647,086.
So from 2017 on these audited figures that your office has provided, we've had an increase of 72,600,000 plus additional costs from the general fund.
Correct. Correct.
Just personnel costs. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 within a 5-year period. Is that correct?
Yes. Correct.
Colleagues, again, these are not my figures, and if these are indeed correct, it's listed as audited employee numbers. I'm baffled on the argument that the government of Guam is somehow having difficulty retaining employees. If anything, the figures here show that we've had such a significant increase of employees on the general fund in line agencies, $72 million plus. And that doesn't include any additional costs we've had. This, of course, this doesn't reflect yet because those numbers, I assume, aren't completed for 2022.
Correct, it's not completed.
And doesn't include the cost of any additional raises for police officers, nurses, teachers.
Senator, if it included any one of those pay raises, adjustments, or anything, that it is captured within the total. When we look at the audit, we just take the bottom line and take what it is from the general fund. It would be an enormous task to go back and try to break that amount down into specific items of expenditures. But in all fairness, I think maybe Mr. Burns would like to kind of quantify the numbers in the audit itself, because all we're taking this is whole numbers, subtracting the general fund, and that is what we're reporting here.
Senator, I'm looking at the schedule. I happen to have the 2021 audit statements in front of me here. So I'm looking at the 2021 audit. And let me be really precise about this. It's included in the audit because the budget requires that these numbers be included in the audit, but they're not subject to audit. If you look at the audit report specifically disclaims the audit procedures on this particular schedule. So I want to be really clear about that. The actual number of employees that's listed in this schedule is 8,230. That includes every employee, however funded.
Does that include autonomous agencies?
No, it doesn't include autonomous agencies, but it does include the Attorney General, the judiciary, and the legislature, because they're part of the general fund.
Well, I think it would be good to get those.
May I finish?
I'm interjecting. I'm sorry. It's my time. I get to do that.
Then I'm afraid you will be misled.
Well, I'm asking the Finance Committee staff to clarify this information because they're the ones that provided the information. If there's different information, then perhaps we can get that from what you have on the 8,000 and give us figures and amounts that will clarify exactly what, because it's a very direct question. It's not a complicated question.
No, the question isn't complicated. May I finish?
I don't think it's complicated at all. I disagree. I know I'm running out of time for this round, but if these amounts have indeed increased and numbers have indeed increased, unless you have information to the contrary, that the numbers are less, I think we'd like to see them. Perhaps you can compile them and provide them for us.
Yes, certainly.
By all means. I think the public has a right to know. At least, I'm assuming, and I know I have a few seconds left, but I wanted to ask Steve, Mr. Guerrero, just to clarify. This is the information you have. Where did you obtain this information? Because it appears if Mr. Burns has different information or doesn't agree with this information, because I didn't generate it.
Hi, I'll go ahead. Yeah, so again, I compiled it based on the audited figures, and Mr. Burns is referencing the 8,230 amount, and it didn't break out per general fund. Like the other audit in 2018, which it broke down of the 8,200, so much is for general fund. So I use a ratio to try and at least get some kind of figure for analysis.
So are these figures from general fund? These are funded by the general fund. I want to clarify that. Are these positions funded by the general fund?
Correct. The count, again, is an estimate.
Yes.
But the cost is, that's what's broken down in the audit.
So do you stand by this figure, at least from these figures here, of an increase of 72 million about from 2017 to 2021?
I mean, it's based on the source. That's where we got it from.
Well, ultimately, of course. I mean,
Again, Senator, these figures are from the audit. So we just take the audit and take these figures verbatim. All we did in 20 and 21, because it did not break it down, we used a percentage of 20 to calculate the amount for 21. So if you look on the audit for 20, we showed that there is actually a total of 8,146 positions. But because it didn't break it down into the general fund, what we did is we took a percentage of the 2020 and applied it to the 21 to come up with a reasonable number. And that's how we,
I know my
Mr.
time's
Burns
up.
is correct.
So
Yeah.
would you say these are reasonable numbers?
Point of
from-
order, Madam Chair, time is up.
Excuse me.
Yes, Senator Brown.
I
your time
understand.
is
I'm
up.
just
Yes.
wrapping up. I just want to verify, if you don't mind. I don't
Point
think
of
we all
order,
have to
Madam
raise
Chair.
our voice and interject and be rude. I just wanted to verify, if you don't mind.
Point of order, Madam
Mr.
Chair. She's
Guerrero,
out of
I
time.
just wanted to
Please close
verify
up,
that
Mr.
you
Guerrero.
stand by the information that you provided.
Yes, I do, Senator.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Guerrero. Thank you.
Thank you,
Point of
Senator
inquiry,
Brown.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Does the time matter, or can we just go over it arbitrarily?
Yes, we allow some leeway for colleagues to wrap up, so we've allowed it for others, and we do that as a courtesy. We try to keep the time as best we can. Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To my colleague, Senator John Brown, as Nana will say, leche, matsude, carnation milk. Anyway, I'd like to there were it was previously asked and answered in regards to whether or not the actions or budgeting process, or whatever it may be, from the feds have any reflection or anything to do with the budgeting of this House. And I have to go back to the last 2 days in regards to my my question regarding the sustainability of this 22% pay raises here. And it's been noted, and every time it's my turn to speak, it's like because of the EITC reimbursement, Section 30, money's going up. Last I heard, those were federal programs, federal reimbursements. The past 3 years, this government has been kept afloat because of the federal monies infused into this island. And to say that the federal monies and reimbursements, whatever they may be, has nothing to do with the budgeting of this House is incorrect. So, if it has nothing to do with any budgeting process, my question would be, if the feds were to quit the reimbursements like they did it once, and they didn't reimburse the EITC, the compact impact, Section 30, which is the source, the main source of this 22% raises here. If these things were not to happen, or the feds would yank these, would we not be in a world of hurt? Anybody? Doesn't matter. I mean, I think I know the question. I mean, the answer to that, so I'll answer myself. Yeah, we would be. We will be in a world of hurt. You know, our main, in years past, pre-pandemic times, we would be sitting here talking about tourism numbers, over 2 million. Yes, this year, we are up about 696% from last year. But we are 59% still down from pre-pandemic numbers. Nothing at all these past 2 days was talked about in regards to tourism numbers and the vital situation that has, or impact into our budgeting. And so that's why even last night I said we've written off tourism. And again, I say, what is the sustainability, what source of income or revenue would sustain this? It's all through fortress money. Uncle Joe, and previously, Uncle Donald, and whoever our next uncle may be. Hey, uncle. So again, I'm just baffled that our budgeting process and calculations of budgeting have nothing to do with with what the feds do. Yeah, maybe they're not the ones putting the numbers together, but it's certainly their greenback that's very vital. We love that greenback. So I'm just say, it's been said over and over, the sustainability is with these federal programs, these federal reimbursements. I hope and pray to God that they continue. I hope and pray to God Uncle remains our uncle. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Madam Chair.
Senator
Estigüizo.
Kanata. Senator Kanata.
Madam Chair, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to rise from the Committee on the Whole with the recommendations to place Bill 24 as amended to the third reading file.
There has been
Call for the vote.
objections. All those in favor of rising from the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation to pass and moving the bill to the third reading file, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. We'll continue with the questions. Senator Fisher, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to follow up on Senator Brown's questions. I thank you very much, and whoever it was that created or collected the information that we have on this document. By any measure, it's shocking. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the lady who's seated to Mr. Guerrero's left.
Llewellyn.
Luella? Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Okay, Ms. Luella, if I could address this question to you, ma'am. Am I reading this correctly, that in 2017, the count of employees was 3,668.
Correct.
And
General fund.
in fiscal year 2018, which would have been the last year of Governor Calvo's administration, there were 3,382.
Yes.
So roughly, I'm sorry? Funded by the general fund. So is it fair to characterize the employment levels that are funded by the general fund in 2017 and 2018 as being relatively stable?
Yeah, about 3,000, 3,500. Yes.
Okay, and then as we come into the Leon Guerrero administration, the number of employees in the government of Guam jumps into 2019. Jumps from 3,382 to 5,185, is that correct?
Correct.
And then, of course, in 2020, the number is at 5,423, is that correct?
Correct.
And then in 2021, as we begin preparations for the general election, general gubernatorial election, we see that number climb yet again to 5,479. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In 2017, the costs were 223,427,643, correct?
Correct.
And then, as the administration prepared for re-election, the number climbs to 296,074,729. Is that correct?
In 2018?
In 2021.
Oh, 2021, 296,074,729.
That's correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Ms. Luella, is that the difference between 2017 and 2021? That's $72 million in change, correct?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So
Yes.
wait a minute, our costs in 4 years, just for the employment of these brand-new employees, climbed, we spent an additional $72 million, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. My inclination, from what I've been told, and this is obviously subjective, is that Guam's population in that period actually fell. Do you know whether or not that is true, or?
I don't have that information. I'm not too sure.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
No, I don't have that information.
Okay, that's fair enough. My inclination from, people I've talked to is that the population did, in fact, decrease by maybe as much as 15,000 for various reasons. Yet, the number of employees within the government of Guam increased by 38%, correct?
From 27 to 2021, is what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
From the personnel count.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me just verify that. I have 49%.
Oh, so it increased 49%. Okay. The reason I'm going over this again is because I never knew this information, and I would wager that the vast majority of the population of Guam had no idea that so many people were being added to the payroll which the taxpayers bear the burden to meet. I am quite certain they had no idea that the administration had increased the public payroll by 72 million, which equals 49%. And so the reason I bring that up is because this is so important for the people to know, and I'm saddened that this was not widely disseminated before. Thank you very much for your answers, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tom. Would you like this side to kind of like give some information reference to that? Not a question, but actually give you some, because as I'm speaking to Mr. Byrne, he has some information to tell you exactly where they're all at, pretty much kind of like Would you like to get that response from?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I'm actually satisfied with the information
Okay.
that was given us by an individual who appears to have quite a bit of expertise and has already indicated she is satisfied with the accuracy of the numbers.
Okay.
But thank you for the opportunity, sir.
All right, Senator Roy, do you have any questions for the panel?
Ladies and gentlemen, the 200 of you who are watching the YouTube channel, I asked for the vote, and they just don't want to vote. So again, I'm going to ask for the,
Objection, I believe the House is out of order.
notwithstanding House rules, I motion again to move out of the, rise out of the committee on the whole with the recommendations to place Bill number 24 as amended to the third reading file with legal corrections. Roll call.
My colleagues?
Point of information, I think that we're trying to make a good decision here, and I don't see the point in rushing to a vote when some of us have not fully gotten all the information that we need to make an informed decision on the measure, and I also refuse to be bullied into voting on this measure before the time has come.
I'm not bullying, I'm asking for the
Understood.
vote.
Okay, stand by.
There's been a notwithstanding motion to rise from the committee of the whole, place the bill in the third reading file.
Point of inquiry.
Please state your point of
Have we
inquiry,
done
Speaker.
the amendments round yet?
No, we have not. We are still in the questions
There
round.
are amendments I see in the drive, so they've not been addressed yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's still a motion, notwithstanding the rules of the committee of the whole. There have been objections registered. All those in favor of rising from the committee of the whole. Need one more. Okay, that's 3 for roll call. Clerk, can you take the roll, please?
Senator Barnett.
Excuse me, what are we doing, ma'am? Sorry.
We are voting on the notwithstanding motion to rise from the committee of the whole and place the bill in the third reading file.
Nay.
Senator Barnett, nay. Senator Blas. Senator Blas, nay. Senator Brown. Senator Brown, no. Senator Dueñas.
He.
Senator Dueñas, nay. Senator Fisher. Senator Fisher, nay. Senator Lujan. Senator Lujan, nay. Vice Speaker Munya Barnes.
Pardon. I make a motion to excuse members not absent. Members absent. Not present.
Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, excused. Senator Parkinson.
I choose to support the workers. I vote aye.
Senator Parkinson, aye. Senator Perez. Senator Perez, nay. Senator Kanata.
I stand with the people that continue to watch our work. Yes.
Senator Kanata, aye. Senator San Augustine. Senator San Augustine, aye. Senator Siniclis. Senator Siniclis, aye. Senator Shelton. Senator Shelton, aye. Senator Titagui. Senator Titagui, excuse. Speaker Terlahi. Speaker Terlahi, nay.
Five ayes and 8 nays. Motion fails. We are still in this round of questions. Senator Kanata, you still have time on the clock?
Pass it. We're just going to keep going around in circles. Might as well be a circus in here.
Senator San Augustine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Earlier, the question was posed to the OFB folks. I'd like to get an answer from the administration, the department administration. As we identify the increase of folks, I'll just state that number one, I know there's an increase in revenue and tax, and I think there are because then there's more taxes out, refunds. But maybe Mr. Byrne can basically tell us where generally they're at. So we don't have to debate where they're at, we'll know.
Well, first of all, Senator, this discussion really doesn't alter the number of vacant positions we have in the civil service, and that's what we're trying to address here by the GPP plan. You know, I'm a qualified accountant. I've got qualifications in two countries, and I just must point out that you really need to look at the whole picture when you're looking at numbers. The numbers of employees that are included on page 196 of the audit report for 2021 is 8,230. That includes, obviously, the increase of employees that occurred because we had federal funds in fiscal 20 and fiscal 21. We had federal funds, ARPA funds, CARES Act funds, which were used to employ people who were engaged in the fight against COVID. In 2017 and 2018, the numbers you're looking at on this sheet here, GDOE wasn't included. GDOE was included in 2019, but 2019 was before the COVID pandemic and before we received COVID funds. So to allocate arbitrarily between general funds and federal funds based upon a 2019 percentage is totally misleading. It doesn't do this body a service to use allocated figures based upon out-of-date numbers. I think it was mentioned that the previous year, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but in 2020, the number of employees was 8,100 odd, and here it's 8,200 odd. That's not such a startling increase. So, but again, it doesn't change the numbers of vacancies we have that we're trying to fill in order to get the job done, and that's what we're trying to address by this general pay plan.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. With that said, I think that kind of clears it up a little bit. But we got another round to ask the question about it again and just do the rhetoric and move on. With that, I'm in support of the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, I've talked with my other colleagues from the other side and, heard their concerns. And I, too, am concerned, with the economy moving forward. I, too, am a businessman. But I am very optimistic with the future. And I think this is a great bill. And with the previous questions that I asked in the other round, and the 22% that was allotted, I guess, for this pay plan, I think it's a good thing. And I don't think we're near where we want to be with our hiring when it comes to customs or the police. Drugs have come down significantly. The cost of methamphetamines come down so significantly, and we rushed in the past couple of days to give 25 million, 20 million to DOE, who constantly told us that they didn't need the money because they had 103 million they were sitting on. And if that was the case, and we discussed in
Point of order.
We discussed in the body
Point of order.
earlier, I'm trying to get to something.
Please state your point of order.
I don't believe I heard GDOE come in and say that they did not need that money. They said if we gave them money, they would use it.
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Nicholas, you may continue.
All right, so thank you. And they were discussing about merit bonuses that haven't been paid out. So that was money that was that was sitting in the coffers, which we could have done had I known that. I'm still new I'm still new to this, but we could have used that money also to solve the merit bonuses. But I also want to say, I mean, thank you, Mr. Byrne, and the panel there for coming out and, you know, your hard work and trying to get this through. I do support the raise, and I'm very optimistic looking forward. I think we can afford this, and this merry-go-round is just wasting a lot of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Siniclis. That completes the third round of questions. We'll now move into the fourth round of questions. As a reminder, colleagues, we have 5 minutes per senator. If you'd like to yield your time can only be yielded to one senator, and you cannot take your time back. We're going to start in the middle row now. Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield my time to Senator Duenas.
Thank you very much. Senator Lujan has yielded his time to Senator Duenas. Senator Brown.
Chris, good.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I had asked also, and I would hope, you know, the chairman of the Committee on Finance, I certainly would hope he was not discrediting the information provided by his staff, because we certainly would want to rely on the information provided by the finance staff in making decisions here with regards to appropriations. But if the Sergeant of Arms could pass this out, again, this is information provided to me by the Finance Chair's committee staff. And I just wanted to go over the revenues, what was ultimately approved in the budget for these fiscal years, and you provided for me from 27 to 2023 what's been approved in the budget. Can we go over those figures? Because I just want to clarify the source of this funding. Does it include the federal funding? Is this just local funding or a combination of both? With regards to what's been authorized, because we've talked about this significant increase in revenues coming in. I just wanted to see, is it reflected in the budget, what was authorized?
We'll just take a brief recess, Senator Brown, while everyone gets a copy. Recess. Senator Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And again, I just want to say that this is information that had been provided to me by the finance staff here at the legislature with regards to, because I did inquire what were our budget amounts for the previous years leading up to where we're at in terms of what was authorized. And if I could ask the finance committee, I don't know if if you want to provide it or you want Luella to elaborate on it, but if we can go from each year from 2017 all the way to 2023. I mean, we have a copy in front of us, but any members of the public listening, don't have a copy. So if you could just go in terms of what those budget amounts were for each year from 2017 on. And just to clarify, these are amounts that were authorized in the budget for that fiscal year.
Yes, Senator. The information that you're seeing here on this spreadsheet basically is the appropriations in the Budget Act for each one of these years from 2017 all the way to 2023.
Okay, could you, since it's beyond your time, Mr. Guerrero, if you or Ms. Luella could relay what those numbers are to the public for each year?
Sure. For 2017, the gross revenues for the general fund was $841,553,930. For FY 2018, the amount was $449,737,278. For FY 2019, this was based on the adjustment, it's $775,628,968. For 2020 was $803,641,533. For FY 2021 was $774,697,305. And then, of course, we amended FY 21's budget, which was made in 3654. That increased to $794,697,305. Then for FY 22, the original budget in 3654 was $706,866,659. That also was amended by Public Law 36106 to $765,010,885. And then for FY 23, we are at $809,922,190.
We'll take a brief recess to address the mic issue. our technical issues. Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to our audio for addressing whatever the concern was in our, here with our microphones. Just going back to the figures that we had here, I just want to clarify because, I mean, we've seen, at least looking at these numbers, if I can ask since the information starts here at 2017, if I can ask Mr. Guerrero, if you can subtract that, and let's just go to 2023. I know the numbers fluctuate. But can you tell me what the difference is between the revenues listed here in 2017? Subtracting, I guess, because it's less, there's actually less in 2023 from the 809,922 that you relayed. What is the difference? I'm just, again, it's just between those 2 years. I know there's fluctuations in between.
What were the years you were asking, Senator?
2017 minus 2023, because it looks like you mentioned there's less revenue here in 2023. I'm trying to understand this. What's the difference? Minus 2017 minus 2023, since it's a decrease.
It's 31.6 million, Senator.
How much?
31.6 million.
Can you explain then the decline? Because I'm assuming during this time we went through the pandemic, we've had all this federal infusion, we had all this stimulus money. Why is that kind of not reflected in the general fund revenues?
Well, if you're looking at 2017, Senator, you got to recall back also it was during the Trump Act tax thing. Those years we already anticipated, losing roughly about $60–70 million. That's why I believe the BVT was raised by 1% to make up that shortfall, anticipated shortfall.
Okay.
And I would assume that's the reason why, is because if you look at from 2018 on, it's kind of constant in all the taxes, whereas in 2017, you notice that the total taxes alone was $508 million, and then in 2018, it went up to 512, but the categories basically kind of switched. But the reason why I believe that the bottom line kind of went down is because also, I believe, let's see. For 2023, we're comparing 2023 and 2017, correct?
I'm just, again,
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
So
you read the numbers. There's fluctuations on every year.
Yeah, I'm just eyeballing it, and if you look at all three tax categories, there's actually a difference of almost about 60, 70, $80 million from 508 down to 422. So that's roughly about $78 million in those three categories alone.
If you can relay the tax for 2017, the amount there for income tax. What's that number there? Can you just read across for each year what's the income tax?
Okay, for income tax, we have three categories. The first one is individual tax.
Okay.
For 2017, it was $100,855,539. In 2023, the same category, it was $93,515,852. I believe that's probably a $7 million difference, decrease. In corporation for 2017, we estimate $142,997,574. For the same category in 2023 was $85,716,966. That constitutes roughly about 42, 52, almost $60 million difference in reduction.
I'm trying to understand that. Why the substantial decrease then during a time of when we're supposed to be infused with all this federal money? Why would these numbers, even corporation, why would that be going down? Individual, we would have had the stimulus money. I know, I mean, that wasn't taxed, I assume, but if all this money was free-flowing, why such a significant decrease?
Again, Senator, in 2017, 2018, and 2019, those were basically, the heydays of government of Guam. We were actually collecting money those years. In 2019, it was the height of collection in Guam. We had 1.6 million tourists visiting us that year. That also attributed to BBT. I guess employment was high, people were working. So these categories, if you look at also BBT, although it shows a reduction, it shows an increase in 2023. I believe that it still holds its course, even though through the pandemic and even through the tax Trump Tax Act period, we were still able to manage. And I would assume that the 1% increase in BBT really helped in that category to keep us afloat.
The only thing I'm confused with is these figures I would assume would be higher, even in spite of the things you talked about in 2017 and 2018, just because of the incredible federal infusion of hundreds of millions of dollars into our economy. Why is that not reflected in these numbers for 2022, even 2023?
Senator, I've been reaching out to actually everybody locally, even before we put this budget together, talk to the economists, talk to the chamber, talk to businesses, everybody. And nobody really could give me pinpoint why things are the way they are. But again, remember in FY22, we ended the fiscal year with 161 million in excess revenues over what we budgeted for FY22. So that if you look at the FY23, even with the FY22, and you add in say the 161 million, that's actually going to bump up the bottom line of 706 to about 863.
But for income tax, you had 508 in 2017, and then you had the lowest amount so far in 2022 with 380 million.
For income tax?
Yeah, just the income tax, yeah. Am I reading that correctly?
You're comparing 2018 and 2023?
2022.
2022.
The Public Law 36-51, 54, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it shows roughly about a $45 million decrease. But again, may I emphasize that in the end of FY22, we actually saw a surplus in all three tax categories. So
I don't know, I'm just looking at the numbers. I don't know, I graduated from graduate school, but 422 looks a lot less to me than 508 million. I had expected this to actually curve upward and be a much higher number. With everything that we've been told, I'm assuming these numbers should have been escalating way up. If I'm going to look at a graph, it should be curving way up, right? At least that's what I'm hearing, and I'm not seeing that here.
For budgetary purposes, Senator, especially for me, I'm more on the conservative side when I do the budgeting, but I'm also open to any type of adjustments on an upward movement, provided those numbers can be substantiated and justified. So these the numbers you see for FY22 are the levels that actually OFB and BBMR agreed that these were numbers that were attainable to be reached in FY22. But at the end of the FY22, we actually exceeded these amounts. So what you're looking at here is just maybe numbers that, at the time we did this was what we felt was reasonable to achieve, and within being realistic to basically accomplish. But at the end of the year, we actually
So can you
generated
provide
more.
us the information on what those additional amounts were? Because I'm just looking at what was authorized, right? What was approved?
Okay, Senator, you also look at the next row, next to FY22. It's amended by, the original budget was 3654, but it was amended by 36106. We actually increased, I believe, the budget by almost $63 million. So if you notice the change in individual taxes in the original budget, it was 71.2 million.
Yes.
On the amended, it went up to 75.6. So is corporation. Well, actually, corporation stayed the same, but on withholding, it went up 2 million. So we saw an increase, gradual increase. We made the amendments. But again, at the end of the day, at the end of the fiscal year, we actually saw more than what we anticipate to collect.
Well, it'd be good to have information that's reflective of that, because again, I look at that as a short term. I mean, I can't, even though Director Burns relayed that it's based on the last 3 years of these revenues coming in, I don't know how we determine moving forward, you know, as Buzz Lightyear says, from infinity to beyond, yeah.
I agree, Senator.
I just want to know, because we're not adding 3 million more. I mean, we're adding 30, 40, 50, 60 million more on top of all the other additional increases that were authorized last year. Can I ask how much collectively did we increase additional costs last year?
Additional costs?
Yes, in terms of just, even if it's just pay increases, because I know we inherit like insurance, all those things every year are going to go up in the government of Guam, but just the increases, how many millions more dollars are we talking to include what's being proposed today with this bill?
That, Senator, I don't have that information now. The information I provided you on the prior years going back, that was based on the audit. So hopefully when the audit comes back, I can give you more of a sound number. Right now, I don't have that number available. I can probably do my best to get it, but again, that's a very fluid number. It requires adjustments, it may require transfers ins and outs, I mean, a whole slew. So what's recorded as of September 30th is still subject to adjustments in the final audit.
I guess my concern is if we're making these kind of decisions on the blind without really knowing what the cost is and what we've encumbered already and what we're encumbering further with this additional amount, I mean, how do we know where to go from here if we don't even know what the total amount is we've increased the government of Guam overall cost? That's a big question mark.
And I agree, Senator, but at least for the information provided, I wanted to make sure that, you know, the comparison was apples and apples and not apples and oranges. So what I provided here was basically the differences in budget as appropriate in the law. We can do a comparison basically of actual revenues collected.
That would be very helpful. Yeah, the actual revenues collected
The actual
would be
revenues
helpful.
collected and see the comparison between that and the actual budget and what the variance was. We can do that, but I just need time to put that together.
How much time? I got 19 seconds, 18 seconds.
No.
Unless I ask Senator
No.
Fisher to yield his time to me.
Senators, you know, information like this, especially me, I need to take my time to make sure the information I give you is correct, and I need to vet it and make sure that the source is correct. And so when I give it out, I can stand by it. But when I'm given like a very short window to do things, we do our best, and there's all that possibility that we don't pick up something, we don't include it. Case in point is that the 5-year projection I gave you on personal costs, I need to make a correction on that because, again, I made the statement earlier that when we gave this information, this was based on the bottom line of what we pulled from the audit. Now, given time to go back and review basically the details, we found for 2017 and 2018, the count that we saw in the audit excluded DOE, but in 2019, it included it. So I can just do the assumption that for the amount for 2019, if they're saying that amount of the 5,185 count included DOE, and DOE is listed at 3,595, if you total the sum of that, you'll come up to 6,977 employees. Again, just for consistency, taking the same 3,500 and apply it to FY 2017, that count will come up to 7,223. Again, these are numbers that I'll extract out of the audit, but if it doesn't give me apples to apples, apples and oranges, we're going to do our best to figure out how we can get you some information. And we try to give you the information as fluid, as precise as possible. But,
Madam Chair, point of information.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please state your point of information, Senator Dueñas.
I don't think that we should be accepting then the kind of top of the napkin audit here, because that would make no sense then, because it's impossible to go from not having DOE included in 17 and 18, go down by.
Do we have the votes to do it?
1,000 some plus employees, but go up in the cost to 279 million. That makes no sense at all. If you're going to go down by that amount of employees, you should have a corresponding drop in the cost. So I would say that we need a new chart that is more expansive to show the difference, because then, I mean, we cannot accept this at all. Mathematically, it makes absolutely no sense.
And Senator, I can basically agree with you. I mean, give me the time to go back and vent this. I can give you more realistic, true numbers. But when I'm given like 5 minutes to come up with millions and millions of dollars of figures, I need time to vet this information.
Madam Chair, a further point of information.
Please
So
state
exactly,
your point of information.
So I think we should then not accept the fact that there's going to be an adjustment to these numbers until we see the full audited numbers, because I don't want to make us look completely off base by having a corresponding decrease in employees by over 1,000 and an increase in the cost by about $50 million. That makes no sense at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, Senator, we pull these numbers out from the audit. I mean, if there's a source that you want to use, it's the audit report. But in the audit report, it doesn't give you exactly what you want all the time. So we need to do our best to go in there and extract these numbers, make some decisions, I mean, good decisions on how we come up with these numbers, and explain it to you. And I did that earlier. But I also wanted to qualify that, you know, these are raw numbers that we're working with. And the audit doesn't really break it down to the penny. So I got to do my best to give you a number that you guys can work with. It's not the perfect number, but it's probably going to be the best number we can derive out of this, from this document.
So, Madam Chair, I would state then that we should withdraw this and get a new chart that indicates education, not education, and the right numbers, because other than that, it's going to make no sense, and and it's just not going to be a document we can work with.
Ma'am, I would like to make a motion to recess with all the conversation that just happened. It's clear
Object.
OFB needs more time to get us some accurate numbers. And I would just motion that we recess until 4 p.m. tomorrow, and we go into the third round for amendments and comments, ma'am. And I'd like to thank Mr. Byrne and Mr. Shane for their time here today. I know that I've exhausted the questions on my end. There's a lot of information to digest to make this big decision for the working people of Guam. So I would just ask for this recess to kind of compute all the information that was gathered here today, ma'am.
There's been a motion to recess until 4 p.m. tomorrow and go directly into the amendment and comments round.
Okay.
There has been an objection.
Madam Chair, I had a public hearing today. I moved it to tomorrow at 2. And tonight, they wanted a second round. If we go right into the amendment, we'll be done. I'm just concerned is that, what does this have to do with the general pay plan? I'm trying to understand all the rationale, because general pay plan is very simple. 22%, the money's there, we move on. And I'm just objecting to
Ma'am, I'm not sure this motion is debatable.
He's registering his objection.
Thank you.
There has been an objection made to the motion to recess until 4 p.m. tomorrow. All those in favor of recessing.
Point of inquiry?
Please state your point of inquiry. You can sit, sir.
Yes. Why do I have to sit? The rules say stand.
In the committee of the whole, we can remain seated. Yes. Thank you.
Right, it's not mandatory, but I'm going to stop wasting your time. Madam Chair, Senator Brown still has 18 seconds, and I haven't exhausted all my rounds. So I'm wondering why we are going immediately into amendments. I don't object to the recess.
Would you like to amend the motion, Senator Fisher?
I join in the motion to recess, but I would amend to finish the rounds, allow Senator Brown to complete her time, and then there are 4 senators on the back row that haven't had the opportunity yet.
Object.
Objection, ma'am. Let's put an end
Object.
to the stalling.
Go
Okay,
to the
there's
amendment.
been an objection to the proposed amendment to the motion to recess. All those in favor of amending the motion?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but just point of information, can you please state exactly what the amendment is?
Yes, I will. The amendment is to change your motion to recess from recessing and going right into the round of comments and amendments, and to pick up where we left off today, so to finish the round of questioning.
Ma'am, I withdraw the motion.
Okay,
The motion to amend.
the amendment has been withdrawn. We are on the original motion to recess until 4 p.m. tomorrow and go directly into the last and final round without a panel and to propose amendments and comment on the bill. There has been an objection. Are there any objections? There have, okay, objections. All those in favor? Motion carries. We are in recess until 4 p.m. tomorrow. We'd like to thank the panel for being here with us. Thank you very much.
We got to put